There was an intelligence gap in the relationship that just grew increasingly problematic over time. He was gorgeous and a nice enough person, but I just felt like I was explaining things to a 5-year-old every time I tried to have a conversation with him. The proposal was the last straw, really. He was already basically a glorified baby, so the thought of having to raise anyone else was horrifying. Runaway Bride True Stories, Part 2. But first, like and subscribe, or else this will be in your bed tonight. Oh god. Well, it started about half an hour before the wedding. I was in a room where all the presents were, and I was looking at this gravy boat, this really gorgeous La Mange gravy boat, when all of a sudden I realised that I was more turned on by this gravy boat than my own fiancé. And then I got really freaked out, and that's when it hit me, how much he looked like Mr. Potato Head. You know, I mean, he always looked familiar. But anyway, I just had to get out of there. Okay, well hopefully somebody got the reference there because I have absolutely no clue, so yeah, can someone please fill me in? My sister broke up with her fiancé 4 months before her wedding, which had already been paid for. And even now, 18 months later, she still hasn't fully opened up to us about it. I hated the guy. He could absolutely not handle his drink. It would never be one drink. No, he had to drink the whole bar every single time. Then he would stagger home and vomit all over the house. But whenever my sister wanted to go out with her friends, just for a couple of drinks, he then had the audacity to complain, till eventually it just got to the point where he just stopped letting her go out altogether. Not to mention, his family were dreadful. They didn't approve of her, and basically just snubbed her. Meanwhile, her fiancé's little brother's on and off girlfriend, who he eventually knocked up, was always trying to one-up my sister too. Eventually, she just felt trapped. She wasn't allowed to hang out with friends, and was forced to go to family events with people who despised her. He was controlling every single aspect of her life. He even made her distance herself from us, her family, which must have been so painful for her. We all used to be such a close-knit family, and she essentially missed quality time with her nephews who were growing up. She finally unceremoniously dumped him on New Year's Eve, and cancelled the wedding then and there. We were all so glad just to be with her. My best friend was a runaway bride, in the sense that she backed out 2 days before her wedding. She logged onto her fiancé's computer while her fiancé was out, allegedly looking for something, but in all reality she was probably snooping around because she felt something was up. Her girlfriend's social media was already opened up on a tab, and she literally witnessed her girlfriend, who was also online at the time, flirting live with some other girl who worked at the vet that they'd been taking their sick dog to. My friend immediately packed up all her stuff, got the dog, and left before her fiancé got home from work. After the wedding had been called off, her ex-fiancé and that girl from the vet got married instead, and then ended up getting divorced just as fast. They got into this massive fight, and the vet girl bit a chunk of her girlfriend's scalp out, like bit the skin right off her head. And then for no reason whatsoever, according to witnesses, the sliding glass door that the vet girl was standing in front of, but never actually touched, just fell down on top of her head and knocked her unconscious. My friend, happy with how karma really took care of this situation, is now in a new and amazing relationship. My girlfriend's friend recently got married to a royal freaking douche. He called her fat on their first date, forced her to sell the modest house she already owned to buy him this massive freaking monster, hit on some of her friends in front of her, then went 360 and demanded she be distant from her friends, and we also suspect that he hits her, among many other things I'm not privy to. At the wedding, he spent 80% of the speech talking about how grateful he was for his friends, and put together a slideshow which mostly dominated of them, with only a few of him and his wife sprinkled in. We were all rooting for her to be a runaway bride, but alas, she went through with it and got understandably drunk, which he decided to berate her for, despite being quite inebriated himself. Please people, if you're in a bad situation, seek help or let your friends help you. I think it should be his friends really that he should be marrying. And also, he called her fat on their first date. Why was there a second date? The first time she ran away was right after the rehearsal period started, and the second time was right after the altar. You would think the guy would have gotten the message the first time around, but apparently it was a situation where a rich but not so good looking guy had managed to snag a supermodel, and in his fear of losing her, he tried to force her into a commitment, through coercion and being manipulative. She felt so guilty that she was convinced to almost go through with it twice. From the pictures my friend showed me, I can honestly say that groom was reaching like no other man had reached before, and I can sort of understand why he didn't want to lose her. But I can't condone manipulating someone into pretending they love you, nor him deluding himself into thinking it would work out after the failed wedding the first time round. You're just setting up yourself for disappointment by that time. I was almost a runaway bride, and I regret not making that decision. I dated my high school sweetheart for years, but it was bittersweet. I found his unwanted jealousy really overwhelming, but we ended up staying together through college because we happened to go to the same one. Then came October. I found myself pregnant and was kicked out of my very Catholic home. His parents were religious too, but they let me stay with them under the condition that we no longer live in sin. I didn't want to go back to living in my car, so I agreed to marry him. This was somewhat reassuring news to my parents, and they weaseled their way back into my life before the wedding. Fast forward to the day of the ceremony, and the music's playing. I'm standing, about to walk down the aisle, when my dad takes my hand and says, "You know, you don't have to do this. You can come home with us." WTF. Could he have mentioned this an hour, a day, or even a week before? The thing is, I've always hated drama, so I just went along with it and I got married. My ex was controlling, manipulative, and aggressive, which just escalated to a whole new level when we moved out of his parents' house a year later. I ran when he nearly hit our baby's skull with his shoe that he'd thrown, because he'd found something in the carpet I didn't vacuum properly. Eventually karma got to him though, and he died of leukemia. Freedom is sweet. Yeah, I totally should have picked the runaway bride option. I know a serial fiancé. She dates guys right until they propose to her, says yes, starts looking for venues and dresses, and then calls off the wedding and breaks up with the guy saying, "I didn't want to marry him anyway." The last time this happened, she had an Ask Me Anything post about her wedding on Instagram. Then 2 months before the supposed date of the wedding, all her photos, Ask Me Anything answers, and any mentions of her engagement suddenly disappeared. Maybe she's getting a kick out of it, I don't know. Well, I actually kind of disagree. Yeah, it seems like a coincidence, but I wouldn't go as far as to stretch that saying she's getting a kick out of it. I don't know, to me, somehow it seems like maybe it's more of like the guys don't live up to her expectations. My girlfriend was a runaway bride. Her ex would constantly belittle her, tell her that she would never find anyone better, that she was lucky who wanted her, and that even though she was ugly, he was able to look past that. She is such a smart and amazing woman. She's a medic in the military, saving dozens of lives in Pakistan, and deserves so much better. But emotionally manipulative people can get anyone if they're given enough time. And unfortunately, he got her. It was only on her wedding day, years later, that things finally took a turn for the better. She was in her dressing room having a conversation with her dad, who wasn't usually in the picture, when he noticed she was being extremely negative about herself, probably repeating her fiancé's words. He interrupted her mid-sentence and proposed they go for a quick Dairy Queen. This was something they used to do when she was little. After a few moments she agreed, and then they left. Instead of going to the nearest one, her dad actually drove 3 towns over, where they sat and talked for hours over ice cream, while her phone rang the battery dead in the car. Although she felt bad that her friends and family were waiting, she said she never felt so liberated. Suddenly a huge weight had been lifted. Her father did eventually go back to the church to tell the bridal party that the wedding wasn't happening, and got his buddies to come and move all her stuff out the next day. She said that while her dad wasn't the best father in her teens, he was the best dad anyone could ask for that day. When I was 16 years old and working at Chess King in the mall, one day this man, who originally lied about his age, saying he was 20, but I shortly found out he was 26, came in extremely enamored with me. I loved the attention and soon believed I was in love. So when he asked me to marry him 2 weeks later, I was not rightly concerned, but ecstatic. He'd even asked for my parents' permission beforehand, and they said yes. And yes, I am still upset with them for that. Summer was fast approaching, and he wanted me to move in with him over the summer. I was living in New York at the time, while his job was based in Maryland. So we jumped into his white pickup truck and drove down there. But when we finally arrived, I was disappointed to say the least. This was pre-internet era, so he had leased the apartment by phone and had no idea what neighborhood it was in, which turned out to be a very bad one. During the day, he would take his truck to work. Meanwhile, I had no transportation, so I would just walk around during the day. And I think, with it being a black neighborhood and me being white, there was a bit of animosity towards me. Everyone would stare at me, but no one would actually talk to me. I felt extremely out of place, despite trying my best to be okay with the situation. Then, when he would finally come home from work, he expected me to be waiting in the bedroom for him every day, the second he got home. I hated it, and I just closed my eyes until it was over. On the 5th day of being in this tiny apartment, I opened the silverware drawer while he was at work, and a big cockroach crawled across the utensils. I don't know exactly why, but that was the turning point for me. I just said out loud, "Sod this," packed up my suitcase and sat on the couch waiting for him to come home from work, and demanded him to take me home. He was very angry, but by that point I'd reached my limit and was adamant that I wanted nothing but to go home. Somehow he agreed to drive me back to New York, and we left that night. During the whole journey, he talked about how this wouldn't change anything, and how we'd still be together, but I just stayed silent. It wasn't until he pulled into my driveway that I took off his ring and set it on the console, and booked it into my house and locked the door. Luckily, he didn't come after me, but he proceeded to call constantly for weeks, which I of course refused to answer, and then never saw him again. I'm 41 now, and I have 4 children. My oldest is 18. Only as an adult have I been able to see how disgusting and terrifying what I went through was. For years I was too embarrassed to tell my story, but now I realize I was a child, and it was him and my parents that should be embarrassed. Well, yeah, her parents should be the ones embarrassed. How can you consent to marrying off your child? Let alone the fact that this dude was like so much over it. He was like 26 or something. You got this far, so why not watch the next part?